Sorry about that. We'll start with the land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge we are hosted on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe. Oh, I just want to make sure the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and the Inuit people. I also wanted to add a little bit to this because while it's really important that we read the land acknowledgement, it's also important that we do a little bit more than that. And we think about what meaningful actions that we can take in our own lives, in the lives of our families and our children, at our schools, in our places of work and our places of worship. And I wanted to share with you, because I have the absolute privilege of actually being in school buildings and seeing the incredible learning and work that students and staff are doing, that I wanted to share some of it with you. Obviously, Orange Shirt Day was acknowledged in all of our schools. The learning continues far beyond that particular day, but I just took a few pictures of some of the work that the students had been doing that day. I also wanted you to know, because I don't know that many TDSB parents know this, but we do have a TDSB Urban Indigenous Center led by Indigenous staff who are really the lead in our board for teaching us all about Indigenous ways of being, and really help us do solid programming in our schools on this topic. And we also have a school which has an Indigenous name, which I'm not sure how to pronounce, but the translation is the Wandering Spirit School of Toronto, where the students study an Indigenous curriculum really tied to land-based learning and Indigenous ways of being. That experience is also available for our students in the TDSB. So lots of important learning and work happening in our schools. I know in our homes, I'm a parent too, and I just wanted to share that with you today.
And now we'd like to move on to seeing how we're all feeling today. So I have a cat and I love cats. So I put a scale of cat for how we are feeling. So I will start. It's hard to pick just one, so I am going to merge two into one. I'm feeling like an 8 because I made a cup of tea during lunch break, and tea always makes me feel like number 8. But also 2 because I have a lot of errands to go do after the conference today. And when I think about that, I'm just like, I don't want to do that. So multiple things going on in my mind at the same time. So is there anybody else who would like to share how they are feeling today?
I'll share.
Oh, okay, go, Margaret.
I'm so happy that this day has come and that I have the amazing support of people like Kaylin, who's on this call from the Zoom platform, and that we have so many people who are engaged with this conference. We have close to 700 people registered. So we're doing
Thanks. Thanks for sharing that, Margaret. Can you say who you are, Margaret? That would be great too.
Oh yeah, I guess I should change my name. I'm Margaret Horvath. I'm from the Parent and Community Engagement Office. So we're the ones who organized the conference. So, and you have some amazing presenters in this room. Can I just say quick, Heather, Betil and Shelley, I put something in the chat that will need to be recopied when new people join so that they see it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. All right. See you. Have a great session.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have some comments. Jessica said that she's feeling like a 3. Mahima is feeling a mix of 4 and 5. So again, sometimes you feel more than 1. Amanda commented, I'm feeling like cat number 8 because my boys are so happy today. That would definitely make you feel like a number 8. So yeah, thanks for sharing.
Did you read Jessica's around miss being in person? But I also love how easy it is to get into links.
All right.
And I love these
Yeah.
the sessions. That's awesome. It's kind of both. Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely feel like I'm a mix of things too. I think I couldn't even pick two right now. I'd have to go three. I'm still in the number 5 kind of zenny mode, but I'm kind of excited. It's exciting to meet people and have conversations about things. And yeah, so that's me.
Okay.
Thanks for sharing. So I think someone said this earlier, I think maybe it was Jessica, just talking about the impact that COVID has had on all of us, right? I think that we've all been on a journey of the last 20 months or more. And our home lives have been deeply impacted by the school closures and lockdowns, emotionally, physically, and socially. And we've had to really navigate unpredictability, which still is continuing in lots of ways. I feel like, you know, you've had to adjust a few times to like, what's the new normal now, right? As everything changes, we're constantly kind of living in that anticipatory state of trying to figure out. And that really impacts our stress levels, right? When we're trying to do that. And I think also kind of being in touch with what our children are feeling. I have an 8-year-old grandson, and I spend a lot of time with him because I live one street away from him, which is such a gift. And we'd go ride our bikes in the summertime, and I call it playground hopping, but we'd go from playground to playground. And we stopped at a playground, and he wasn't getting off his bike. And I'm like, "What's going on, buddy?" And he's like, "There's too many people here." And I just thought, like, just the subtle ways that we all carry it for, you know, him and his little 8-year-old world to think about that and feel anxious. So I just think about the levels and the ways that we've had to deal with COVID. And I think that we're really balancing a lot of expectations about ourselves personally, responsibilities that we have, and the loss of kind of the comforts of the structure of our lives, you know, what the expectations of what we could think and how things were in a routine, because we know routine and structure gives us a sense of security. And so we were always pivoting, I'll say. And so I think that has often been challenging for us. Okay, you can go on to the next one. And I think as parents and caregivers, it's like, how do we manage with all those unknowns? You know, it's like whether they're returning to the classroom or participating in remote learning. And I see someone put a comment here. Oh, my 6-year-old will not take her mask off in settings where it's supposed to be safe to do so. She missed the playground so much, but will now go when it's too busy, right? So it's impacting the way we're all navigating the world, and our children are also navigating that. And so I think there's so many things to think about and reflect on that. I think I know with my grandson, it often comes up. He's like, when we talk about the vaccination, why can't I get the vaccination, right? As it's not offered at this point to children. And also dealing with the isolation that we're learning remotely. And as people return to school, I hear teachers saying that children are not remembering how to socialize, like kind of that awkwardness that sometimes might happen at the beginning of the summer. But for some children, they may have been out of school for almost a couple of years, physically being in the place with others. So, and then we also reflect on that we have lots of children who are struggling with mental health, and parents as well. And so how do we manage all that and the return to the classroom? And they're concerned about how teachers might be navigating that, and how do they support their children and comfort them and kind of even recognize the extent. And our focus in the classroom has really been about trying to get teachers around engaging kids, the importance of developing connections and listening to them and being there. I heard a grade 4 teacher the other day who talked about the impact that had, that he was getting back from his students about just feeling heard, like if they just would spend time in a circle every morning connecting. So I think the importance of that is really there. Mahima is saying, I found it important to answer my son's questions honestly, but I also tell him that I also don't know the answers either, which is really honest because we don't always know the answers, right? We're trying to navigate that and try to keep him talking about his feelings, which is absolutely important because I think we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And so it's part of it is we're trying to navigate, how do we do that? So that's really why we decided to do this workshop. It is what makes centering well-being so important, because centering well-being and mental health is really kind of important in mental health and in learning. So we think about engaging with school and learning, and it's especially challenging for children if they're having to cope with more stressors and unknowns. And we know that every community has been impacted in different ways, and not everyone has been impacted in the same way. Some people are more impacted by what's been going on with COVID and what's been going on in the world. And so I think as parents and caregivers, it's important to be able to find ways to support your children. And I think we have some people who have teenagers here. And it's important to center everyone's well-being and also your own as a parent. We're going to talk more about that as we move through our presentation about the importance of taking care of your own mental health and well-being.
So as Heather was mentioning, many of us have been under, prolonged stress during this time. And I totally agree with what she's saying. It's looked very different for everybody, and everybody has different things on their plate, but definitely our roles as parents have grown, and many of us have become sideline teachers while juggling jobs and trying to do all the things that we need to do to just keep children fed and clothed and clean. So there's a lot that's sort of happening. So we use the word stress quite a lot. And I know I will often say, I feel stressed, but what is it to feel stressed, right? And I think what we have to recognize is stress is a very normal human reaction or response. We all feel stress at different times. And our body is kind of made to deal with stress. But stress has a real impact on our physical and our mental health and well-being. But it also helps us when we get stressed, it helps us respond to situations. So there is a bit of what we call an adaptive or a helpful component to stress. Because if we never got stressed, we wouldn't get out of bed in the morning. We wouldn't make sure children's lunches were made. Like I think of myself as a bit of a whirlwind in the morning. If I didn't feel stressed about doing all the different roles and responsibilities that I have, none of it would get done. But I also know that when I'm too stressed, I just don't do anything well at all. I don't parent well. I don't do my job well. So when we have too much stress in our lives, our performance and the way we do things is really impacted by that. When we don't have enough stress, we're sort of more low key and we're maybe not engaged or as active or at participating in different things in our lives. And where we need to find ourselves is somewhere in the middle. Right? And COVID has really changed what that middle ground looks like for people and where it is. But, what I'm trying to say is that we're all going to have stress in our lives, and sort of being able to keep it in sort of a moderate range is really will help us function and do all the different roles that we need to fulfill in the best way that we can. I apologize. So stress, look at it. We all feel this way, I'm sure. We've all taken on so many more roles and responsibilities. And during COVID, there's so much more weight that I feel that we're all carrying. And just when we think we figured something out, as Heather mentioned, we're asked to pivot again and find a kind of new way of doing things. And so that constant uncertainty certainly adds to the stress load that we have. One of the things we know about stress is it builds up, and we might not notice it at first, and we might not be willing to acknowledge it. But if we let it build up too much, it's definitely going to catch up with us. So one of the things that we're going to talk about during this afternoon's presentation is what meaningful ways for you can you find to let go of a little bit of that stress every day? Because if we let it all build up, we'll be like the picture on your right, which is when we hit the total stress overload button and we're just in pure survival mode. And when we're in survival mode, we don't do sort of any of the things that we're supposed to do for ourselves, for those that we love and care for very well at all. I know this is not news to any of you there, but a stressed brain is a very scattered kind of a brain, and it impacts all parts of the way your brain functions when you're under a lot of stress. So as you can see there, it's hard to be alert and to, listen and sustain yourself through a conversation when you're feeling stressed. And if you can't do that, well, then definitely you can't remember the key messages that were delivered. I know when I'm feeling extremely stressed, my parenting style becomes a little bit more rigid and inflexible, and it's kind of can sometimes be my way or the highway, and that never turns out very well. So that happens sometimes, and I know certainly I see in my boys that when they're really stressed, they may be more irritable or have difficulty managing their words or their behaviors. So stress really impacts, our ability to think and reason and problem solve and respond well to others around us. And you won't be surprised to hear this, but stress doesn't just impact your thinking and the way your brain is working, but it certainly impacts physical well-being. So individuals who are carrying a lot of stress will often see that impacts their sleep patterns. So they may have more difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep. It can also impact you physiologically. So people who are really stressed may get sweaty or a really strong, fast heartbeat. They may feel sort of way more irritable and on edge, a little snippy, or that tightness in your chest that we've all experienced. And prolonged stress leads to, more long-standing kind of concerns around anxiety often. So just like we're all telling our kids during remote learning, I know I was like, make sure your laptop is plugged in, be ready for learning, make sure you're fully charged. We're no different, right? We're no different than our cell phones. We all need an opportunity to restore ourselves and be recharged. And when we let ourselves as parents become completely depleted, then not only are we not available for ourselves, for our own self-care, but we are far less available to have sort of meaningful, helpful relationships with those we love and care for. So it's really important, and I think what we'd like to highlight in this presentation, that taking care of yourself is one of the most important things you can do, both for yourself and for your family.
So now that we've talked a little bit about what stress is and what it can do to our minds and bodies, we want to talk about what we can do to strengthen our mental health toolbox. So what can we do to shake off a little bit of that stress every day? I just want to read a comment made by Jessica before I continue. She said, I had an experience as a chair during the previous year where a few parents reached out to me to apologize because they could not make as many meetings as they had in the past. I did not hold anyone to the fire in any way because, to be honest, I was barely keeping up with kids learning from home, money being less available, higher risk work settings, etc. I saw a lot of burnout into this year. I felt it was important to be really compassionate and to be aware of that. That's a really important point, Jessica, and that touches on a couple of the things that we will be mentioning as well in terms of being compassionate to yourself and to others and not being able to make as many meetings, it's okay to say no. It's okay to not be able to commit to as much as you are able to when you feel, as Shelley was saying, fully charged. And so the first thing we want to mention is to have daily mental health check-ins. So a way to think about this is that if we are feeling any sort of physical pain, like if we have a headache or if we have leg pain, back pain, we usually assess how it's feeling throughout the day. You know, we might say that, oh, my headache is slowly going away, or, you know, the pain in my back feels worse today than yesterday. And we have that check-in with that physical pain that we're experiencing. And so what we would like to encourage is to also do the same thing in terms of having check-in about our mental health and how our minds are feeling in any given day. Because to foster like well-being and taking care of ourselves, it's not only during times of like crisis or strong stress that we want to have those check-ins, but consistently throughout the day so that we can be more aware of the feelings that we're feeling. And so what ways can we do that? One thing is to learn how to accept your feelings, which, you know, sometimes it's hard to accept what we're feeling. So there are ways in which we can do that. The first thing is to learn how to spot early warning signs that you're becoming stressed. And so for each person, this can look differently, but taking a moment to identify like, okay, how do I know that I'm becoming stressed? It could be some of the physical symptoms that Shelley was talking about. It could be that, you know, you're feeling a bit more irritable or making more like, having more reactions than you typically might in situations. So for every person, these early warning signs will be different. So recognizing what those are so that we can acknowledge we're feeling stressed before it becomes too overwhelming and before our emotions become so big that it becomes really, really difficult to bring ourselves back to a calmer state. And the second one is to resist the temptation to try to run from your feelings. So I admittedly do this often as well, where if I'm feeling an emotion that I don't want to feel in that moment, I'll try to like push it away or avoid it or not think about it. And that's actually really draining on our minds and on our brains to push that feeling away and to not think about it. It's actually easier on ourselves to acknowledge that feeling and acknowledge in that moment, like, yeah, like this is making me upset, and accept the fact that, you know, we are feeling upset in that moment, and to, you know, to just sit with it. And then once we recognize these early warning signs and we accept the feeling that we're feeling, we can then move towards taking action. And we will talk about some strategies and techniques that we can use throughout the day to take action. And I want to just say that with these techniques as well, to, you know, whether it's mindfulness that we will be talking about or other strategies throughout your day, to consider these techniques like a menu. So some techniques might work for you, and some others you might look at it and think, you know, I don't really think that one fits into my lifestyle, and that's okay. So it's about picking and choosing the ones that you feel work for you and will fit well into your own personal schedule. And you might try a technique that we talk about and decide, you know, that one's not for you, and then you can try a different one. Sometimes it can take a little bit of trying to figure out which techniques to take care of yourself work the best for you. And so along with that, as a parent, especially when you might have like a child or a teen who's struggling, it's easy to forget about taking care of your own body. And so some ways that we can do that is to not overlook your basic human needs. So when we give our bodies what they need, adequate sleep, healthy food, some active movement, then our bodies feel at their best, both physically and mentally. And so can also start off small by identifying like one element. So for example, if we touch on sleep, even telling yourself, you know, I will try going to bed 10 minutes earlier each day so that you have even that 10 minutes for yourself extra at night, to be with yourself, to like calm your body and de-stress. So those small pieces that are consistent are really beneficial in the long run. We can think small and work upwards from there. And also give yourself permission to take a break from the worry or the thing in your life that you feel needs attending to. I think it's easy to feel guilty of, like I should go do this thing now, or, I should really take care of this. And I want to encourage each of us to be okay with taking a break from the worry, whether that be for a day, for a couple of hours, a couple of minutes in the day, because ultimately taking that break will allow you to be the best version of yourself so that you'll be more prepared to tackle whatever it is that needs attending to. And also reach out for support from other parents who understand what you're experiencing, whether they have experienced it in the past or are going through something similar now. It is helpful to have that support group. And later on in the presentation, we will provide a resource to be able to connect with other parents of children who are in the same age group as yours, so that to help form some sort of community with other parents. And before, okay, I was just checking the comments, but Heather's got it very covered. So now I'll just touch briefly on practicing self-compassion. So what does self-compassion mean? It is to be compassionate towards yourself. And it's a concept that allows you to start tuning into an inner voice that is more kind and compassionate towards yourself, as opposed to an inner voice that, is putting you down or making judgments about yourself that sometimes we don't even notice that we're making. And so being more mindful of our thoughts and practicing using kind words towards ourselves. And this is really effective for our mental health because it supports us in feeling less anxious. So instead of focusing on all the things that we're doing wrong, we're able to pay attention to everything we're doing right. And I think, often if we feel we made a mistake, or if we feel that we did something wrong, we're very quick to judge ourselves for it. But if we do something that, was helpful for our child, or, engage in an activity with our child, or had like a good moment in our day, I feel like we dismiss those more quickly, and we don't take the time to say like, hey, you know what, I did a really good job with my kid today. I was really able to support them through whatever challenge it is that they were going through. So taking a moment to recognize those good moments as well. And that in effect makes self-compassion and then makes parenting easier and less stressful as well. As we accept our own struggles and our own shortcomings, and we also learn to accept those of our children or our students as well. And so we understand that, we don't have to be perfect, our children aren't perfect, and building on each person's strengths and abilities and working upwards from there together. You're on mute, Heather.
Sorry about that. I usually don't mute myself. So then anyway, here I am. I think one of the things that's really hard is that we often focus on what's happened or what's going to happen. And I think sometimes shifting to our attention to be in the present is really useful. And you may have heard of mindfulness. Some of you may have had more exposure to it or not. And some of in our schools, a lot of teachers are also using mindfulness. We know that when we're able to kind of focus on being in the present, that it can make a big difference to our mental health and well-being. And we can do that by using mindfulness activities. Basically, it's really about the ability to be aware of what you're feeling, thinking, and doing in the present moment without any judgment of yourself for what you're thinking or what you're feeling. When I took a mindfulness course, I'll never forget, someone said, well, I'm not able to focus. I'm thinking about this. And that person said, well, actually you're doing it right now because you're acknowledging what's in your mind, and that you can't fail at being mindful. It's like taking that moment. And I know that there are lots of children and adults who really benefit from mindfulness, to really try and take that time. I was at a parent speak once where a mom came up to me at the end. She said, I have 3 boys and they're under the age of 6. She said, my middle child is my most challenging. She said, one day I'm walking home with him. We're in the playground, and he was really having a hard time listening to me and was not cooperating. Anyway, she said, all of a sudden he said, wait a minute, mommy, I need to do my mindfulness minute. And she's like, what are you talking about? And so he gets on a swing and he does this kind of a body scan. He's like talking about his feet and all the way up his legs, and he does some breathing, and she starts to say something. He goes, wait a minute, mommy, wait a minute. So she said he did this for maybe 3 minutes or 4 minutes, and then he kind of stops himself from swinging on the swing, and he goes, okay, I'm ready to go now. And she was blown away because somehow he had really been able to find a way to kind of self-regulate, like to regulate his emotions. And so I think the part that I get excited around our focus on mental health is we're also teaching kids to be more aware of their own mental health. I think the question that Mahima had earlier around, like, how do you talk about it? It's talk about all the things that we've just been talking about, your emotions, your feeling, how you're doing. All those things are really tuning into your mental health and well-being. So I did put a connection to School Mental Health Ontario, a kind of a tip sheet, but there's lots of other stuff available on there. So I'm going to change the focus a little bit to focus on your personal resiliency. All these things are true about your child, but we need to focus on doing these for yourself. And Batul had mentioned some of them, and I think Shelley too, the importance of nourishing yourself, whatever that looks like, eating and drinking, and critically sleep. During COVID, I've heard so many people, their sleep has been impacted, and their children's sleep has also been impacted. They are not able to kind of get the same good sleep that they might have before. So trying to find and try different things to change those patterns. The importance of staying active. I love that in my community now, I see way more people walking as families, just out and about in the neighborhood, and the schoolyard in my neighborhood is often in the evening had lots of families like playing and just kind of being outside, being physical. I've heard of people having dance parties and all kinds of fun ways to keep the activity going. Also, the importance of staying connected, because that's been challenging in the ways that we might have done that before. We can't do it the same way, or we haven't been up until more recently been able to do that. So people have gotten really creative about how they connect. I've heard a lot of different stories about maybe having a relationship with someone in the neighborhood. They've never really had one before. I remember a parent telling me about a child across the street. Their children just became window buddies. So they were able to see from one apartment to the other, and that they developed a relationship. So all the ways of creating community. It's important that we also pause, which is part of what the mindfulness is about. It's right. It's like taking a moment just for yourself to feel relaxed and restored. And you know what that looks like. For some people, that might be being more active. For others, it might be slowing down. It's going to look different for everyone. Taking time to reflect, being mindful of your thoughts and feelings, both positive and negative, because that's all part of your self-care, taking time to reflect on that. And I know when we feel very busy, we don't often take the time to do that. I know I don't. So I need to be reminded. The other part, and this came up a bit earlier by Batul talking around self-compassion, is that we need to be gentle with ourselves. Pay attention on how you talk to yourself. And I think earlier, Jessica was demonstrating that in her response to a parent last year in terms of not being involved in your school committee, right? Because, yeah, we have to be compassionate with one another and recognize that we're all dealing with a great deal of a lot of stuff. and also be committed. So we need to be committed to our own self-care and to also support our children's taking care of themselves. Because when life gets challenging, that's when we really need to really prioritize that. And sometimes that's more challenging than others. But remembering that sometimes just small things can make a big difference.
So piggybacking on the small things, when we talk about self-care, sometimes we see it as being indulgent or having to be sort of a big event. What I love about this chart is it really lets you see visually that you don't actually need a lot of time to engage in self-care. I mean, it's always lovely as a parent when you have like a little block of time away from your children or away from your responsibilities, but who are we kidding? Those moments are probably few and far between for many of us. But I just wanted to share this chart with you to acknowledge that even if you just have 1 minute or 5 minutes, there are different activities that you can engage in that don't take a lot of time, but do help a little bit in terms of recharging your batteries and making you sort of a little bit more available for all the different roles and all the different responsibilities that you have. And this has been talked about a little bit today by both Batul and Heather. And I know I'm particularly guilty of this. I'm not always the kindest in my words to myself, but I definitely don't practice that with the people I love and care for. You know, I am definitely try to be always kind and compassionate and gentle and understanding with others, but I don't necessarily always bring that kindness and compassion back to myself. It is definitely something that I am working on. But what I liked about this slide is it made me stop and reflect a little bit about what some of the language might be that I've used in the past, and how I might want to reframe that or restate that for myself to be a little less sort of hard or critical, and a little more gentle with myself. So that's what I particularly love about this slide, is it just made me think for a minute to kind of stop and listen to that voice in your head and kind of pay attention to it. And it's really hard to change it if it's sort of ingrained in who you are and how you talk to yourself. But sometimes I'm able to catch myself and think, would I say something like that to somebody I cared about? And if I wouldn't, then I try. I mean, I'm not perfect by any means, but I try not to use those statements or that language to myself as well.
We want to touch a little bit now on what you can do to support your children when they are feeling really big emotions. So it can be really challenging to, meet the needs of your child when they're feeling really big emotions. And so there are some ways that can support you through that process. So one thing is to first ask yourself, what does my child need from me right now? So asking this question helps put the focus on that moment and your child's experience, as opposed to getting caught up in your own emotions in that moment. Because, I don't have children myself, but I can see that when you see your child going through something really challenging, then that brings up emotions for you too. And then you might feel stressed about, well, how am I supposed to support them? And you feel what they're feeling. So taking a pause to ask the question, what does my child need from me right now, brings the center back to your child's experience and brings you into a problem solving mode. And second, it is really helpful to validate your child's feelings. So when you let your child know that, it makes sense for them to be feeling the way that they're feeling, saying, it makes sense that you would be upset right now, shows your child that, like my parent or my caregiver gets it. They get that I'm feeling upset right now, and it's okay for me to feel upset. And just that understanding for them that their caregiver understands this feeling can take a load off of them. It's like a relief of like, okay, like, yeah, like I'm sad and it's okay for me to feel sad. And that helps for you to be that calming presence for your child. So when they're feeling really overwhelmed, they're having so many feelings and don't know what to do with their emotions, when they see that their caregiver is there, understanding them and being that calming presence, you serve kind of like an anchor for your child through their big emotions. And so these are some ways, some things that you can practice when your child is having an emotional experience. One is to listen without interrupting. So if they're telling you a story about something that happened during their day that was upsetting to them, listening attentively, not interrupting them, and listening to that full story of what they have to say. And then offering empathy. So some ways of doing that might be saying, you know, like, that must have felt really awful, or I am so sorry that happened to you. And again, that piece of validating their distress of, you know, it totally makes sense why you would be feeling upset right now. I would be upset too if that happened to me. And then offering to help them problem solve so that your child knows that you are there for them to help them work through the problem. So saying, I am here for you if you would like me to help you solve this problem.
We wanted to share this with you because we talk about doing mindfulness and we talk about sort of finding ways to ground ourselves. But I acknowledge, particularly in my head and in my space, there's always a lot of noise going on. And I don't feel that I can often do it myself. I need a little bit of help in getting there. So what we've shared with you here are some links to mindfulness-based activities that you can do just yourself or together with your child or teen to really get a sense of, you know, what it is that you like. And for me, it varies by moment to moment. Sometimes I like to feel more energized and do those kinds of things. And other times I like to be a little bit more still. But we're going to practice one together. It's just 5 minutes. And it's called the tree meditation. And we chose it because we really feel it's something that everybody can sort of relate to.
Sorry, I'm just switching screens to the meditation. Can everyone see that? Okay, see some nods, perfect.
Do you ever feel like there's so much going on in your life that things feel chaotic and out of control and you just don't know how to calm down and take care of yourself? Sometimes I feel this way when I get news that's upsetting to me or I hear about something that is worrying. And so when I feel like this, there's a special mindfulness practice that I do to take care of myself. We call it the tree meditation. We're going to do this practice with our eyes closed if we're comfortable. If not, we can have them open and pick a point to focus on. You can do this practice sitting down, standing, or even lying down. Sometimes, if I feel really worried during my day, I do this practice while I'm walking around. So it's really up to you. But find a position that you feel stable and at ease in. And if you're ready, close your eyes. We're going to begin by picturing a tree that's in a huge thunderstorm. There's lightning and rain, and this tree is on the top of a hill and the wind is blowing. And imagine the branches of this tree. They're just waving back and forth, back and forth. There's so much chaos going on around this tree. What does the tree do? Why does the tree not fall over? Let us move down to the trunk of this tree. The trunk of the tree is not moving at all in the rain and the wind. The trunk of the tree is solid and stable, and the roots of the tree go down into the ground. So no matter how busy the wind is around the tree is solid and stable. Feeling solid and stable is a beautiful gift that we can give ourselves when our world feels like that busy wind, that busy rain. To do this, we practice going into our trunk. Our trunk is our belly breathing. Take a moment now to place one or both of your hands on your belly. Notice how your hands move when you breathe in and when you breathe out. Take a moment to drop all of your attention down from your head, where you are often distracted by worry and fear and anxiety. Send all of this down to land in your belly, in your stable, solid trunk. Really allow your thoughts and your worries to settle, to be held in the sensation of your hands on your belly as you breathe in and as you breathe out. You can hold yourself here, making a safe and stable place, even if the world around you is busy. Take a few moments now on your own to really rest and ground your mind and your whole body in your stable trunk, your belly breathing. When you're ready, you can slowly and gently move your hands back down to your sides. And on your next out breath, gently open your eyes. And remember, at any time, wherever you are, no matter how much the world feels like a storm rushing around you, you can quietly place one or both of your hands on your belly. Come back to your trunk. Take a moment to stabilize yourself whenever you need, wherever you are.
I was able to put those links in the chat box. So those were the things that were on that slide.
Circle of gratitude practice. Today, we're going to try a circle of gratitude practice.
Can everyone see the slides now?
Yeah.
Okay.
So one of the things that we wanted to talk about was just to let you be more aware of the ways that you can seek support through the school, through the Toronto District School Board. So we have a few things, and we're going to outline all the different things that we have to offer. And I think that one of the things that we've tried to do during COVID is to make mental health services and supports more accessible. And so I think the next slide is the virtual office hours. Yeah, so, well, actually, the Parent as Partnership Committee, this is a committee that we've had for probably about 7 years now, and it's a committee that meets once a month to talk about mental health and well-being, the ideas around creating a better understanding of what we can do as parents and caregivers to support mental health and well-being, increase awareness of the importance of mental health and well-being. So if you are interested in this, then you can, there's my email address at the bottom, but this is also included in the slides, so you can attend, and I'll also post it on the TDSB website. The next thing that we've been doing this since last February, we are offering virtual office hours. And again, it's about trying to make mental health support more accessible, more easily accessible. So 3 hours a week, we offer really a Zoom in call that you can just show up. You don't have to pre-book. You don't have to pre-plan. We have a team of professional support services from different disciplines who are there to support you. We do 2 virtual drop-ins Tuesday mornings from 10 to 11 and Thursday 7 to 8, which is just kind of a open kind of a conversation. We do offer one on Wednesdays between 7 and 8, and that's more for our parents of kids who have complex needs or special education needs. So we invite our staff who has more specific skills around that community and knowledge. Oh, thank you. Jessica says she's tried it and you share it with other parents. Awesome. That's good to know, because I always say it's kind of like an experiment. We're trying to see if it works, but we usually get people showing up. So that's always great for us to see that that's still meeting a need. And then, and Let's Connect. Sorry, I didn't talk about Let's Connect. Just in the bottom corner, Let's Connect about mental health and well-being. We've now started, we've done 2 Let's Connects. We did one in September 1st, kind of a back to school. It's a Let's Connect about mental health and well-being, and it's a board-wide webinar that we're offering with different themes. We've done the one on September 1st. We actually did one June 22nd, September 1st, and we did a little bit of a follow-up. Are you hearing that siren in my background?
Yes.
Going past my intersection. So we plan on offering those throughout the school year, and you'll see they're actually going to be right on the if you go into Parents and Mental Health and Wellbeing, you'll see a link and then an outline of what that particular session is going to be about. So, and then I think Shelby,
as Heather was talking about, we do have consulting to all of the school's professional support service staff. So you can see we have child and youth workers, members of psychology, social work, speech and language pathology. And in our programs for students with developmental disabilities and more complex physical or medical needs, we have our occupational and physiotherapists. So we do have support available for students, families, and educators in the TDSB. In order to access our supports, usually the first step is what's known as a school support team meeting. So that can be initiated either by a parent or caregiver by contacting the administrator at your child's school, which would be either the principal or the vice principal if your school has one. Or an educator could initiate it. Parents are always invited to share their perspectives, and it's an opportunity to talk about the strengths and the needs of your child, and to have a discussion about what support they may or may not want or need, and who would be in the best position to offer that support. So just so you know, there are supports available at all of our TDSB schools.
And we wanted to share with you some apps and other resources as well. You do have access to these slides. So now I forget how they were shared, but maybe Shelley or Heather at the end can briefly mention how the slides will be available to you so you know where to find them. And these are some apps that are free that you can get on your cell phone to support you through mindfulness activities, both for yourself or for your child. It can be helpful to just have that app that's like readily available, so you can click on the different activities that are within the app. So we've just listed a couple of them here, and then CAMH also has some resources that we've included. And Shelley will just touch on some links here that are embedded. So once you have access to the slides, you can click on these links and they will take you to the resources.
Thank you, Batul. So many of you may know that the professional support services staff at the TDSB, particularly during the COVID, certainly before that, have been sort of curating resources just for TDSB staff, parents, guardians, students, and educators. and they are available on that first link that you see there. So any of the resources that we've developed are available there. We've also started a mental health and well-being YouTube channel, which I highly recommend you checking out. It has sort of short bite-sized presentations, webinars on definitely anxiety is a big topic that we address on the YouTube channel. And we also have some really great resources from some of our specialized staff who work with children and adolescents with more complex developmental needs. So there's some hands-on videos in there demonstrating some skills that you could use in your home. We have also developed mental health action toolkits. And I know somebody in the chat box had asked about, conversation starters with your child around mental health and well-being, and just getting more literacy around that, and what might be some nice resources to share with your child, interactive activities. So those are available in our mental health action toolkits, and we do have one specifically for families. We also have them for children based on their age range. So we have a primary one, a middle school one, and one for teens and youth. We're also constantly updating and developing our culturally responsive mental health resources with different community agencies that families might want to access. So there's an ongoing list there. We're constantly vetting them and making sure all the links are still active and working. And then we've also included a link because Batul spoke earlier about the importance of parents having a connection with other parents. And certainly that could be done through your school, or, you can certainly meet parents in different ways. But for parents who have children and youth that are really struggling with mental health issues, it can be harder to find somebody who has that commonality with you, or you just might not know how to go about doing that. There is an agency called Pleo that offers all different kinds of groups for parents and caregivers who have children or youth who are experiencing some kind of a mental health difficulty. And the groups are organized by age range of your child so that you have sort of a common connection to the parents that are in the group. So it's important for you to know that there are different groups based on, what you may or may want support with.
I'm just aware that we're into overtime. So I just want to respect people's time because I think their next workshop's at 2:30. So just quickly, the take-home message, just move to the next slide, Batua, please, is really what we're saying. Parenting during COVID is not parenting as usual. I want to recognize it's been challenging, lots to deal with, that we're all finding our way with it. And so you need to be gentle and kind to yourself and recognize that, that we're living through a pandemic, and that's going to be challenging at times. And hopefully somewhere along the way, we can see those